In the spring of 1888, you know what? Way back, the skies over New York and New Jersey and southern New England opened up, and it snowed for days and days and days. More than 4 feet of snow piled up, howling wind. There were drifts of snow that were 50 feet high. A report from the New York Times back then describes New York City as helpless in a tornado of wind and snow. It was the Great Blizzard of 1888, and by the time it ended, quote, every horse car and elevated railroad train had stopped running. Quote, the electric wires, telegraph and telephone were nearly all broken. Jordan Weissman of The Atlantic dug up this old newspaper drawing of what the storm was like 1888. And if you look at this old photo, you can see why the blizzard put out the lights. This was New York. Look, the electric wires strung overhead where the elements could knock them down. Hundreds of people died in that storm. An enormous number of buildings burned because fire departments couldn't reach them. When the snow finally melted, the runoff was so great that it created floods. The Great Blizzard of 1888 was a huge disaster. New York City historian Rick Burns reminded us about it last night, of how New York City responded to that long ago disaster. New York City then built the modern subway, so the trains could keep running even in the elements. And they built a new electrical system, this time with the wires not overground, but underground. Before the Great Blizzard in 1888, New York City had been fighting for years about whether to put the wires underground. But after the blizzard, the abstract political debate stopped and the innovation began. They had a problem that everybody could see: overhead wires, vulnerable to storms. And they fixed that problem. They put the wires underground. The scale of the still unfolding disaster of this storm, of Sandy, is stunningly vast in terms of human misery and economic damage and how widespread it is. New York City alone is losing something like $200 million a day. Every day that the power stays out and the transportation system doesn't work. New York City has the 17th largest economy in the world. If New York City were a country, it'd be the 17th largest national economy in the world. You unplug that and everybody hurts. Whether you live in Manhattan or New Jersey or you live in Idaho, if you do not feel it yet where you live, just wait a minute, because it's coming. We have known this disaster was coming. For the 1 in 5 Americans who live somewhere on an American coast near the sea, weird weather and rising seas have been almost a scheduled nightmare. We knew this was coming. We knew that storms like Sandy will keep coming, and maybe with increasing frequency. Once that threat stops being too scary to consider and it starts being a river in your street or in your house, then all that stuff that has seemed inexorably mired in esoteric ideological political fights is no longer esoteric or hypothetical. It's no longer even partisan. In the city of Yonkers, New York today, the Democratic mayor there rationed gasoline to stop people from clogging the roads in Yonkers as they looked for somewhere to fill their tanks. The mayor said no more of that. Yonkers has a 10-gallon limit per person until further notice. In the city of New York, the mayor, first elected as a Republican, put an emergency rule into effect that said you need 3 people in your car before you are allowed to drive into this city. The city established checkpoints for drivers coming into Manhattan in order to enforce that remarkable rule and try to unclog city streets. No subways, right? The rationing and the checkpoints are controversial and very intrusive, but local governments decided right now, at least in the short term, they've got to find a way forward, a big way forward right now. For a few years now, the government of New York City has talked in very clear terms about climate change and the stuff New York City is going to have to build if we're going to continue having a New York City. At the national level, the debate over climate change comes down to like Barbara Boxer or James Inhofe as the head of the Environment Committee, right? Debating over polar bears and igloos on the Washington Mall. And God bless them both. But the ocean has already surged into New York, and the city is going to have to decide something now. They say it would cost $5 billion per barrier to protect New York City from the sea using one of these high-tech surge barriers out at the sea. $5 billion. To anybody who wonders whether we could afford something like that, I offer arithmetic. Sandy is now estimated to cost this region an estimated $60 billion. So just for kicks, we could build 8 of those $5 billion barriers, and we could get $20 billion change back, along with saving ourselves. With this historic, fairly predictable, fully predicted disaster, what is possible has become undefined by need, by what is so clearly needed. What is possible is being redefined by what is happening around us.